Welcome to Thriller Recaps. Today, I am explaining the movie, The Boy Who Harnesses the Wind, explaining every scene as it happens. Watch till the end, and please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy this. In a maize field in Malawi, 2001, men harvest dried corn while little children play nearby. John, the man among them, suddenly collapses and dies. At his funeral, the pastor speaks about John and his younger brother, Trywell, who started the farm business after returning from Doha 20 years ago. He also mentions John's children, the eldest being Jeremiah. The ceremony is briefly interrupted by masquerades dancing, and the villagers smile at the sight. The wind howls through the village, and the weather is dry. William Trywell's son is fixing a radio that belongs to Mr. Bamusi. Trywell asks if he has fixed the other radio yet, but William hasn't. Outside, Trywell listens to his radio and asks his daughter if she slept well. She replies, as usual, that Trywell tells William to check the roof while they prepare a uniform for him. William is excited to see the uniform after his bath and quickly puts it on for school. His parents and sister tease him when he comes outside in the uniform before they all go to eat. In a bittersweet moment, Trywell gives William some advice before he leaves for school. On the way to school, William meets his friend Gilbert, and they compliment each other on their new uniforms. Trywell goes to a store to buy a bag of phosphorus and a bag of organic fertilizer. He mentions to the shop owner that he heard on the radio about a flood in Mozambique. Suddenly, they hear loud noises from a political party called NUP campaigning. At home, Trywell's wife and daughter are sifting ground corn. His wife reassures her daughter that she will have no trouble finding a job after university, and will be able to do things even beyond what her mother. They later meet Trywell and give him the bags of sifted corn. A man on a bicycle passes by and smiles at the young girl, though her parents are unaware. At school, the headmaster addresses William and the other students. The man on the bicycle, who is Mr. Mike Kachinguda, arrives late and introduces himself as their form teacher and science teacher. He starts teaching them algebra. Annie, Trywell's daughter, goes to a shop looking for work but is turned away. At the end of the school day, William gives Mr. Kachinguda a letter about Annie's university placement. Mr. Kachinguda informs William that his father must pay the full school fees for Annie to be accepted. At home, William asks his mother if he can use the kerosene lantern to study for a science test, but she says they cannot afford it. After school, William and Gilbert go to a junkyard to find something to help them read at night. Meanwhile, Gilbert's father, the village chief, addresses the farmers about an offer from the tobacco estate owner to buy. He warns against selling, but Jeremiah, Trywell's nephew, raises his hand to sell. Shocked, Trywell leaves the meeting in disappointment, especially since William witnessed the event. At home, Jeremiah tells William he only knows how to use money for paying school fees for his children, who will eventually leave him. Trywell responds that Jeremiah always needs money because he is always gambling. William then sets a trap with his dog, Kamkwamba, hoping to catch some birds. Once he catches some, he and Gilbert take the birds to a place where they can gain entry. Inside, surrounded by older boys, they sit and listen to stories. The storyteller stops, saying he can't continue with younger boys like Gilbert and William present. William insists they're not too young and understand about women just as much as he does. When the radio stops working due to dead batteries, everyone looks to William. He rushes home to get old batteries and asks his father if he can get the remaining school fees the next day. Trywell says he can only do that after the harvest, but since many farmers sold their trees and the farmlands are flooding, it's uncertain. After spending time with the older boys, William and Gilbert head home and see Annie and Mr. Kachinguda kissing. William is shocked and asks Gilbert not to tell anyone. The next day, at the junkyard, Gilbert asks William if Annie passed her senior school certificate because Mr. Kachinguda was her teacher. William says she passed because she studied at night. Gilbert then suggests they should destroy Mr. Kachinguda's bicycle so he can't visit Annie again or embarrass her when people find out. They reach the bicycle, but William tells Gilbert he can't do it. When William goes home, he overhears his parents discussing their finances. Trywell says they cannot afford the school fees for now. The next day at school, William is called out for not paying the students are told to go home and return only when they have the full payment. Trywell tries to work on his farmland, but the floods make it impossible. He decides to visit the auction house to see his old friend, Daniel, and takes William with him on his bicycle. Daniel is pleased to see Trywell and William. At his office, Trywell asks Daniel to help him negotiate with the Yoba, Colorado estate owner to buy back the land that other farmers sold at the same price. Daniel says it is impossible. He then questions why Trywell's brother didn't leave the farm Jeremiah sold to him. Trywell explains it was his brother's decision, and he could leave it to anyone he chose. Daniel calls Trywell the Pope for being the most honest trader in Doha. He adds that they used to insult him until he married the most beautiful girl in the market, Agnes, William's mother. Daniel warns that after the rain, Malawi will face great hunger. Trywell goes to see the chief and asks him to speak to the president. Meanwhile, Agnes and Annie are cooking in the kitchen. Annie asks Agnes how she knew Trywell was the one she wanted to marry. Agnes replies that there is no one asking Annie for marriage and advises her to go to university so she doesn't end up just a wife and mother. Gilbert and William visit the junkyard, where William explains that he can use the dead batteries to create a new one, but he needs electricity for the pump. The next day, William sneaks into school. When Gilbert sees him, he asks what he's doing. William says he just needs to avoid assembly and attend science class. After science class, William asks Mr. Kachinguda how the light on his bicycle works. Mr. Kachinguda tells him that William will have to inform the headmaster about his attendance despite not completing his school fees. William strikes a deal. He will keep quiet about Mr. Kachinguda and his sister if Mr. Kachinguda helps him get a library card to study dynamos used for lights. Kachinguda takes William to the school library and tells the librarian, Ms. Sikolo, that the headmaster has given William permission to use the library, though no teacher is available to help him. Later, the president visits the village. The village chief is beaten by the president's security for giving a speech criticizing the president for not helping them in their difficult times. William and Gilbert rush to stop the village chief from being beaten, but gunshots are fired into the air, causing everyone to flee. The president and his convoy drive away from the scene. That night, the village men embrace Gilbert to offer support and comfort him for what happened to his father. Trywell tells William that he must become a man now because no one is coming to save them. He needs William's help on the farm to save every grain they can. Despite their efforts, the harvest is disappointing. Agnes says it won't be enough to last until the next season. They sell their roof sheets for money and replace them. While selling the sheets, Trywell hears that the government is denying the country's true state. He jumps onto a truck heading to campaign for the opposition party and leaves. Ms. Sikolo asks William why he is trying to make dynamos. William explains that if he succeeds, they could plant and harvest twice a year, even in the dry season. Mr. Kachinguda suggests to Annie that they should leave for another place, promising to return with money to pay her bride price. Annie becomes angry and says she will not disgrace her family. The headmaster catches William in the science class and expels him. Ms. Sikolo pleads with the headmaster not to be too harsh, as William just wants to learn. At home, William tells his mother he has been expelled, and she is devastated. They hear people rushing outside, and she gives him money to buy grains from the government truck, which will be cheaper. Trywell and the other men watch in shock as people are beaten and robbed. Agnes is holding her baby when Annie walks by. Agnes asks where Annie has been, and Annie says she was with a friend. Agnes warns Annie not to do anything foolish, knowing she sneaks out at night. Annie snaps back, saying there's nothing for her in their village, and maybe she should just leave. Annie gets dressed to go out again. When she opens her door, she finds her mother holding the baby. They argue, and suddenly, a man walks into the house. He says he doesn't want to hurt them, he is just hungry. He was told to go to the chief's house, but the chief can't help because he is dying. They hear the sound of a dog barking and realize the man didn't come alone. Several men then steal all the grains they have in storage and leave. William is still in line to buy grains. When the trucks leave, he follows them to the warehouse. He manages to buy a small amount, and asks for help to leave the warehouse safely. Trywell returns home, and Agnes, in tears, scolds. At night, William arrives with the remaining money and grains. Trywell says they can only afford one meal a day. Agnes decides it will be dinner so no one goes to bed hungry. Annie scoffs and leaves the room in anger. Agnes follows her and slaps her when Annie says Trywell left them, risking their safety. Agnes tells Annie not to speak that way, as Trywell went to help them. She insists she will not let her child starve. She grabs Annie and hugs her as they both cry. William becomes frustrated when his bird traps fail again. He watches a masquerade sitting like a dead person in the forest due to the famine. One afternoon, while eating, Trywell tells his farm worker they will make ridges the next day. The worker says it's impossible because the land is too hard. Trywell suggests they pray for rain, but Agnes stops him. William tries to feed his dog Kamba, and Trywell warns him that he will break Kamba's neck if he does. At night, William meets Annie and asks her to Kachinguda to give him his dynamo to create a water pump. Annie is shocked that William knows about her relationship with Mr. Kachinguda. The next afternoon, William returns home to find his parents crying. His mother tells him Annie ran away with Mr. Kachinguda, leaving a note saying they now have one less mouth to feed. Trywell yells at William to bring Annie back, but William doesn't know where she is. William finds the dynamo on his bed, meaning Annie must have convinced Mr. Kachinguda to give it to him. They go to the school to find Mr. Kachinguda, and Agnes tells the headmaster that they sent their children to school to give them a better life. Now, Annie has run away with Mr. Kachinguda, and William has been expelled. Agnes asks the headmaster to allow William to use the school library since the school is closing down. With help from other boys, William creates a wind machine that powers a radio and suggests that a bigger machine could be used. The boys begin to search the junkyard for parts. Tyrell visits the chief's house, where he finds the chief terribly sick from the beatings he received from the president's security men. William takes his invention to the farm and shows it to his father. Tyrell is shocked when William explains that he can make a windmill for a water pump, but he needs parts from his father's bicycle. Tyrell is furious and tells William that using the bicycle means it won't be usable again. William argues that it's not just a toy and that he learned how to make it in school, as Tyrell wanted. Tyrell loses his temper, shoves William to the ground, and demands that from now on, William wake up every morning to help on the farm. William and Gilbert start working on the farm. One hot afternoon, Gilbert wonders if the masquerade will come when Tyrell dies. According to tradition, it should come when a chief dies, but with the ongoing famine, the heat is so intense that it seems there will be no rain for months. William and Gilbert visit the older boy's house and find it almost empty. They ask the remaining boys what happened, and they learn that everyone is leaving the village to go up north. William needs their help to create the windmill, but they say there's no bicycle to use. One boy suggests taking William's father's bicycle. They go to William's house, but Tyrell is shocked and angry to see them trying to take the bicycle by force. William backs out, saying he can't do it, which angers the others, including Gilbert, and they all leave. Tyrell goes to see the chief and meets Agnes outside. William finds his dog Kamkwamba dead from hunger and starts to cry. Tyrell tells Agnes that William brought his friends to steal his bicycle for their toys, and she walks out on him. He follows her, and she expresses her frustration, saying that wherever she follows him, she tells him that when she followed him to his village, she lost her parents. Then she lost Annie, and now she doesn't want to lose William because everything they try seems to fail. Tyrell starts to cry and asks if she is blaming him, but she says she is not blaming him, she's just letting him know how she feels. William buries his dog Kamkwamba. Tyrell then rides his bicycle to meet him. Tyrell tells William that he and his late brother John had dreams, but some dreams are just lies. William insists that he is not dreaming and that the windmill will work. He apologizes for bringing his friends to steal the bicycle. Tyrell explains that John didn't leave the farm to him because he didn't trust him, fearing he would fail. William responds that he didn't fail him because he sent him to school. Tyrell takes his bicycle to someone who breaks it into the parts William needs. With the help of the remaining villagers, William builds the windmill. While they are working, water suddenly starts flowing from the hose, and everyone. Tyrell hugs William and asks some boys to go to the chief's house and bring seeds so they can plant vegetables. They use the water from the windmill to soften the ground and start making ridges for planting. While they work, Tyrell looks at William with awe and happiness. The chief dies, and during the funeral, the masquerades come. Gilbert looks at William with happiness, knowing that his efforts saved them and allowed the masquerades to come. William pets his new puppy and tells his parents that Ms. Sicolo mentioned he could get several scholarships when the new government representative visits to see the windmill. William decides to stay and help his father with the farm, as Annie cannot return to live with them. His father encourages him to go to school and prosper, assuring him that he will always be with them in spirit. William first goes to the university in Malawi and later to the University of Dartmouth in the US. Annie remains married to Kachinguda, and they have 4 children. They visit Wim occasionally. Tyrell and Agnes stay in the village and live prosperously. Please like, share, and subscribe.